Well, our leadership series continues, and sitting with me here today is our enlisted person of the year and our reserve enlisted person of the year. Now, we have 32,000 enlisted people in the Coast Guard, and there's only one enlisted person of the year. And we only have one reserve enlisted person of the year out of 7,000 reserve enlisted. So when you think of it, your likelihood of being in these seats are probably the likelihood to get struck by lightning is actually greater than sitting in these seats right now. A fundamental aspect of leadership is trust, and BM2 Ward is a pursuit coxswain, which means when we have a target of interest, it's up to him to launch. They normally brief with the command cadre first, but then it's ultimately up to him to pursue a go-fast, oftentimes at night, with a boarding team and using up to and including deadly force. So with all that going on in your head, Evan, tell me what trust means to you when you hear the boarding team is being mustered and it's time for you to lay to the boat, and now the trust has been placed on your shoulders to apprehend a smuggler from the Coast Guard Battalion.
Well, Admiral, the trust really begins at the commanding officer's position before it comes down. My commanding officer, he gave me the certification to be the non-compliant vessel pursuit coxswain. And when myself and my crew get launched in a small boat to go out and actually maybe perform the mission or do an interdiction, he doesn't come with us. We're his eyes and ears out in the water. He stays behind, and he has to know, hey, I certify this coxswain. He trusts me. He trusts me with a goal to go and complete the mission or whatever it is at the time. Then trust continues on, because once we're launched, ultimately the coxswain has full responsibility of the small boat, and there's no way he can ultimately do everything in a boat. So a lot of those roles are delegated out to the other members of the boat, i.e. the boarding officer, the comms standard or communications guy, the engineer. All these members in the boat with myself are also, just equally responsible as much as I am. And it takes a great deal of trust for all of us to come together and really work as a team, and the commanding officer has to trust me, I have to trust my crew members, and to get out there and perform and complete the mission, sir.
I'm going to flip back over to MK1 Terry here and talk about his world of trust, because you operate in a completely different world. You operate in a joint environment, you're a port security unit, you do Title 10, you're dependent upon the likes of Transcom and others to provide you mobility so you can do your mission and get yourself into theater. So what does trust mean to you, Wilton?
Well, Admiral, trust for us is, completely different in aspects of we are in a joint community. We rely a lot on the Navy, the Air Force, the Army, for the most part, to assist us, both for mobility and for our CBRNE, chemical biological response stuff. We're really beholden to what they have for us. I've found that, just empowering and trusting my people in giving them the tools that they need and giving them the training and the understanding of how to do the job, for me, makes life easier. I can't rely 100% that someone from the Navy or someone from the Air Force is going to step up and do what we need to do, but I can rely 100% to know that my guys will.
Yeah. And you use the word trust and empowerment in the same sentence, and really they are intricately linked. So I'll come back to BM2 Ward here. As we talk about empowerment, there's an element of trust that goes with that as well, because the flip side of empowerment is micromanagement. And so if you're launching as a pursuit coxswain, and maybe you have a headset on, and maybe the bridge is giving you actual rudder commands as you're doing the job that you've been trained to do. So tell me about the degree of empowerment that you experience in terms of your ability to carry out the mission.
Well, when it goes to micromanaging or anything like that. When we get launched, and if my commanding officer was right there giving us orders of how to steer the small boat, rudder commands, down to nitpick, nothing would ever get done.
And I've seen this play out when I was coming up as a junior member. When it came, if something did not go right, oftentimes my experience was that you were suddenly empowered for whatever did not go right, which is not the type of empowerment that we're looking for. In other words, you become the scapegoat.
Right.
And when I think of the fundamentals of leadership and empowerment, maybe you're underway, and maybe that boat flips over. And we've seen that happen before. But it's the job of the commanding officer to take full responsibility. That went through the risk assessment, that went through that pre-launch brief, and maybe the weather changed, and maybe we're operating at the very limits of the boat. But that is a point in time where empowerment needs to go up the chain of command and not down to the deck plate levels of the organization. And that's a fundamental aspect of leadership and empowerment as well. So, Wilton, I'm going to ask you the same question on empowerment, your ability to think on your feet, and I know you're one of those people that do exactly that, because I know you have a sea story to share on that topic as well. But especially as you find yourself operating in a joint environment that is very hierarchical, and you may have to go through 3-4 levels in the tiers of the chain of command. Tell me what it's like at PSU 309 as you're getting ready to set out on a mission. And maybe everything doesn't come together as necessary. What's your experience been with empowerment in that regard?
Well, Admiral, we found that it generally doesn't go right. They say
Nothing goes according to plan.
The best laid plans fall apart in the face of the enemy. Well, it's very true. We've run into many instances where we've planned it for months and months and months, even on a small exercise or a larger movement. And just recently, last year, we were moving a bunch of folks, and our aircraft just wasn't going to be able to be there. It wasn't going to make it. And one of the things that I found, and what I've been allowed to do in over many COs, is to build relationships with the other branches and to be able to have those people to call that if we need help. And some of them are 04s, 05s, and there's many levels that we go through to try and get this done. And we had to scramble and make some phone calls to produce 2 C-130s in about 90 minutes to move our folks. Otherwise, the exercise, the mission that we were doing at the time wasn't going to happen. So it's, I've been allowed that latitude to be able to perform those.
And these are Coast Guard C-130s, or are these other
These are,
service C-130s?
one was an Air Force Air Guard unit, and the other one was Air Force Reserve.
So how far up the chain of command did you have to go in order to commandeer 2 C-130s?
06 level in the Air Force.
So we've got E6 going to 06, and at the end of the day, the E6 prevails.
And we came to a good understanding of what needed to be done, and the aircraft showed up.
That is awesome. That's great. A lot of times I find myself giving advice to leaders. In fact, we've got every flag officer, members of the senior executive service here in Coast Guard headquarters today. I take advice, I give advice. And you've done both of those as well. But is there any words of wisdom that you might want to share from your perspective as a leader? And again, Wilton, I'll start with you in terms of advice that you might provide to others who aspire to lead.
I've always kept with me, Captain Zidane had told me a long time ago, he said, never forsake your crew for your career. And if your crew is a group of rock stars, then you'll show as a rock star. And I've always kept that.
That is great advice. Wow, outstanding.
I would say recognizing potential of individuals. The Coast Guard as a whole, it's exciting to know the type of members that are out there in the fleet. There's a lot of intelligent, very capable members in the fleet today, and leaders should recognize members' potential and not be biased against rate or rank, and provide opportunities if somebody's willing.
Well, certainly the words of both of our enlisted persons of the year resonate with me, and especially those last comments. Too often we judge a leader by what's on their sleeve or what's on their collar devices. They have been leaders for their entire Coast Guard careers, right from the time they left basic training, and have clearly distinguished themselves as leaders. 1 out of 32,000, 1 out of 7,000, but this is the best of the best. And so it's been a real honor for me to sit next to two very inspirational leaders who live and breathe our core values, semper paratus. But I know when you go back to the unit, there are probably people that you don't even realize that are looking up to you today. In 10 years from now, they might be sitting in these same chairs, and they'll say, you know, there was this BM2 Evan Ward, there was this MK1 Wilton Terry, and I just aspired to be that person. And I know those people are out there right now. You don't even realize it, the impact that you have as leaders in this organization. I cannot be more proud to sit with you here today, and then tomorrow night at our festive dinner together, look forward to recognizing you formally at our Enlisted Person of the Year dinner. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining us here today. Great to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.